Welcome back, everybody. This recipe is really near and dear to my heart because it took me a really long time to figure out sourdough, so I'm really happy to share it with everyone. You're going to need a medium-sized mixing bowl or a large-sized mixing bowl, a baking scale, and fed sourdough starter that is pretty ripe. I keep mine in the fridge and I feed it 2 to 3 days before I know I'm going to bake with it. I added 130 grams of that fed sourdough starter and 860 grams of water. This recipe will make 2 very large sourdough breads, mainly because if you're going to do sourdough, you might as well go all the way in. So, heads up as to the large grams here of flour. Start with 750 grams of bread flour, 300 grams of whole wheat flour for a little bit of health kick-in, and 200 grams of all-purpose flour. This initial stage is called autolyse, so you just want to combine your water and your flour, and you want to mix it so the flour is completely saturated with the water, and you're going to let it rest. This enables the proteins to develop before adding any add-ins. Now, there are a myriad of ways in which you can bake sourdough bread, and the millions of bakers out there probably have different methods. This is the one I learned. This is the one I like to perform the most. So you can do this by hand or in a stand mixer, but combine all of your flours with the water until there are no flour pockets remaining. Then simply let it rest for 15 to 30 minutes in order for the proteins to develop. I cover it with a clean tea towel and let it hang out anywhere between 15, 20, 30 minutes. Once your autolyse stage has been completed, we will be adding salt to flavor the bread. The basic ingredients of bread are flour, water, salt, and yeast. You really need nothing more. I added 25 grams of salt. Typically, it can range anywhere between 15 to 20 grams of salt per 500 grams of flour. I tend to reduce that just a little bit because it just seems too salty for me. So I used regular iodized table salt. You can use kosher salt. Sometimes kosher salt, in my opinion, tastes a little bit saltier, but regardless, you want to add it right on top and then perform the pincer method, which I'm doing right here. Basically, you want to apply stretch and folds to move the salt to the middle of the bread, and then with your index finger and thumb, pinch it to create little pockets where then everything will be combined after 15 minutes of applying this method. Once again, add your kitchen towel, let it rest for another 15 to 30 minutes, and you'll finally be able to perform the very iconic, the notorious, the famous sourdough stretch and folds. All you need to do is take the outer edges of your bread, stretch it upwards, and then pat them down in the center of your dough. Typically, bakers do this 3 times every 30 minutes. That is exactly what I did. And this, once again, helps the dough have extra protein, extra firmness, extra strength, and allows it to have very beautiful protein structure so the inside crumb of your dough is beautifully airy and put together. Without this process, your dough will kind of be a large mass without a lot of shape. That's why the stretch and folds are so important. We allow them a 30-minute break because that way the gluten can relax. And then after 30 minutes, we once again apply those stretch and folds, which is basically making the proteins fold upon each other, get stronger over time, and then eventually we will bulk ferment the dough. Cover with a clean kitchen towel, and you can let it chill overnight or at room temperature for 6 hours, but I prefer to let it bulk ferment in the refrigerator for up to 12-15 hours. You can even do 24. It really just depends on how quickly your bread proves. So the bread has definitely doubled in size, and it looks really vibrant and full of air. So let me show it to you all. There it is. It's basically doubled in size, and it's just fermented with sourdough. And what we're going to do now is we're going to split it up into 2 different loaves. We're going to do a pre-shape. It came to my mind. Those neurons connected. Pre-shape, and then afterwards we'll let it rest for 15 minutes. Then we'll shape it into the final boule and batard shape. So it should be good. Once your bread is ready to go and doubled in size, we will pre-shape the bread. So the way in which you shape bread normally takes place in two different stages. The pre-shape, which is basically dividing your dough and forming it into a boule, and then the final shaping process, which is shaping each individual loaf into the desired shape you wish it to take for the final end bake. Start by releasing your dough from the mixing bowl, and then with a bread scraper or a knife, divide the mass of dough into 2 equal portions. In order to make sure that our dough is equivalent one piece to the next, you want to take a scale, a kitchen scale, and weigh it in grams, making sure they're equivalent or just about the same. If they're a couple grams off, it's really not a big deal. This just really helps the bake so that they bake at the same time in your oven if you bake them at the same time. Now the pre-shape. All I do is take my bread scraper and move the dough in a circular motion so that it is taut and it forms an outer layer of skin. This skin is the gluten that we took the time to develop in all of the previous stretch and folds of our bread making process. I will be shaping these bread loaves into 2 individual shapes. The first one, the iconic boule, which is more or less what we've shaped the bread into right now, and the batard, which is the oval shape. I like to take a wicker basket with a good cloth sheet, cover it in rice flour or corn flour right before we bake everything. This just makes sure that nothing sticks to your kitchen towel when you want to release your bread. For the first bread, after it's rested after the pre-shape for about 10 to 15 minutes, we will shape it into a boule. You will take all of the extremities, the outer circumference of that bread, and basically pull it towards the center. There's really no fancy way, in my opinion, to form a boule. It's the easiest shape. It's really simple to learn. My easy way is taking 4 edges of the bread, moving it towards the center, flipping it around, and then carefully shaping it towards the middle, pulling it back to your chest so it develops beautiful gluten. Add a little bit of flour on top and on both sides, but specifically on the top because you will lay that in your wicker basket, and then set it aside. For shaping the batard, this oval shape is slightly different, and there's many ways to do this online, but because my bread had some pretty good gluten development, I'm going to show you the easy way to do it. I like to put it in a rectangular shape. I move the bottom section towards the middle and I give it a nice little pat. Then from the top, I take that section and roll it over like you're swaddling a baby. Then I take one of the 2 edges that I haven't done anything with, and I press it in the middle and pull the 2 baby sides, the right and the left side, I knit it towards the center, and then here we will start to roll our bread into that oval shape by taking one of the top edges and slowly rolling it towards us, and each time we roll it, compressing it just a little bit so it creates a very taut and firm oval shape. It should look kind of like a Subway sandwich, looking kind of round, circular. It looks like an infant. Let's be honest, it's a little bread baby. Then I like to quickly close the outer edges with a little bit of a quick pinch, and then I tuck any of the other edges together. I add a little bit of rice flour or corn flour to the top, and once again in a floured wicker basket in the shape of an oval this time, I lay the little bread baby to sleep. I like to cover both of my breads with just a spattering of flour to make sure that they don't stick while they rise. Good morning, everyone. It's 8 a.m. I got up at like 5:45 today, and today we're gonna bake the bread. So we have 2 beautiful loaves. I'll show you those in just a second. And we want to preheat the oven. If you have 2 small Dutch ovens, that's perfect. I have 1 large one and 1 small one. You want to preheat your Dutch ovens at 425 Fahrenheit for 45 minutes before you even consider putting the bread in there. The reason why is that when you put your bread inside of the Dutch oven, there will be an immense amount of heat and steam that will allow your bread to rise beautifully, which is what you want in sourdough bread. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to preheat our oven, put those Dutch ovens in, and then wait 45 minutes before we put our actual loaves in. So yeah, let's get to that step now, and I'll show you all the rest. These are our breads that I was talking about. So this is the batard, the oval shape, and then this is the boule, which both look really good. You can bake these straight out of the fridge, or you can wait for them to come up to room temp. Doesn't really matter. Okay, I just want to shift something. Let's see if I can see myself. Yeah, okay, cool. So we want to put one of the rack out. You can take it out of your oven regardless. You want it to be in the middle of your oven. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And then I'm going to put my red Dutch oven in. Again, it's better if you have 2 Dutch ovens. And then, yeah, we'll just get baking and scoring, and it's really easy from there. I'm going to see if I can fit them both. Okay. W, they both fit. Nice. It's like very stressful because my oven is like super old. We live in this like old LA complex, but like the service is amazing, but the appliances are a little outdated. So it makes me really nervous because the Dutch ovens are so heavy that like the rack is like slightly bent, but I think it should be fine. I typically get a lot of anxiety from these kinds of things, expecting my house is gonna blow up or something. So anyway, preheating now, and then we will score and bake. All right, the oven is absolutely boiling. It's so hot with both Dutch ovens in there. We're gonna put some parchment paper down. You wanna use cornmeal or rice flour to dust them before adding the sourdough loaves, and then we're gonna score. For the final step of your bread, after you've preheated your oven, you will lightly flour with some corn flour or rice flour a piece of parchment paper. Gently release your 2 breads from the batard and the boule basket, and then we will take a bread lame or a very, very sharp knife in order to score the bread. Scoring the bread allows the bread some room for growth, organized room for growth when it bakes in those really hot Dutch ovens, which is exactly what we want. And the scoring of the bread is completely up to you. For a batard, I like a simple 1 deep and long cut on the side of the bread, and for the boule you can get slightly more creative. We've all seen those amazing creators on TikTok, on Instagram, who make beautiful designs with their sourdough bread. I'm not one of those yet. I like to make a very simple tic-tac-toe line, or it can be something even more simple than this, but sometimes I like to get a little creative. Toss your breads in those preheated boiling hot Dutch ovens and bake them for 30 minutes with the lids on. That's honestly one of the most stressful bits because everything is super hot. You don't want to burn yourself, and you don't want the dough to be at such high temperatures, around such high temperatures for too long, because then it sort of like relaxes and gets gloopy. So just a small note, compostable parchment paper does exist. I love a green kitchen, and this definitely helps. If you're interested, I'll leave it linked in the description. After 30 minutes of baking, you want to take off the lid to each individual Dutch oven, and you will see the color of your bread. My purple Dutch oven always bakes a little bit hotter than my red. I simply think this is because it's much bigger. Not a problem at all. I lowered the heat just a little bit and baked them once again for 15 to 20 minutes to ensure it browned evenly. Once your breads are done, Be mindful in those last 5 minutes to ensure that you don't over bake your bread. I feel like the batard got a little darker than I would have liked, but this is simply because the two sizes of my Dutch ovens are slightly different, but it still made excellent, crusty, delicious bread. It was slightly burned, but not enough to notice that bitterness. To release the dough from the Dutch ovens, you want to definitely do this with mitts. Take your Dutch oven and with one of your hands gently guide your dough out, and the parchment paper will slip right off. You can do these for both of your beautiful breads and let them cool on a wire rack until completely cool. This is crucial because you want that gluten development to stay intact. Do not cut your bread preemptively. This will not totally destroy the bread, but it certainly will harm it from that final structure. When you crack open your bread, it should be perfectly baked. These beautiful breads came out spectacular. You have an even crumb, perfect rise, absolutely extraordinary, and they make the best bread for homemade grilled cheeses. If you guys like this recipe, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe, like, comment, all of those wonderful things, and I really hope you enjoy this one. I post every single Friday and daily shorts. See you next time.